So can you tell us a little bit about the context of the upcoming Conference of Parties?
See, in these Conference of Parties 26, there are two main issues, two critical issues which are important for tackling the climate crisis, whether anything will happen or will not happen. The first one is, of course, the amount of reduction that the parties have pledged, because now there is no commitment, there are only pledges and review. So the amount of reduction pledges is highly insufficient, everybody knows that. So this is the 5th year after Paris. So the critical issue is whether the governments are willing to commit to a far larger reduction which will avert the climate catastrophe. That's one critical issue. The second most critical issue is, for a very large number of poorer countries, what will be the finance? Because that finance is extremely important for countries to both transition from a dirty economy, dirty energy economy to clean energy economy. And the second is, even if you transition, there are billions of people who are suffering, will suffer more. So for their adaptation and resilience, for the poorer countries, that finance is critical. So that finance, the developed countries are really not giving what they promised, and they are giving a lot of false accounting, including leveraging and private finance and loans. So these are two major critical issues. But in the negotiation, official negotiation, there is one negotiation going on which is very critical, the rule book, the Paris rule book, on which the marketing, what will be the carbon market rules. That's one of the contentious negotiation issues on which the parties, which are the governments, they are working. And as climate justice groups, as civil society, as people's movements, we are dead against introducing the carbon market in reducing the actual emissions, because we have seen over the last 20 years, these are hugely fraudulent transactions, these are accounting tricks. Actually, reductions have not taken place in selling countries, not in buying countries, nor globally. So these are just frauds, people are being fooled, and the catastrophe is coming closer and closer.
Soumya, you talked about the catastrophe a couple of times. Maybe you can just give a very quick thing on the latest IPCC report and what is the catastrophe we're facing?
See, the latest assessment report 6, the working group 1 report, which is the physical science basis, which gives the latest state of the climate and where we will reach in the next decade, 2, 3, 4, next 4 decades, starting with the next decade or the current decade. The results are showing, and we have to understand that the IPCC report that came out is not the original scientific finding, because the IPCC being an intergovernmental panel, the first scientific report is vetted by government representatives, and we have talked to several scientists. They clearly said outside the official meetings that we had to take out several of the findings in charts and graphs, which was more scary. Even with the published report, it's showing that we will cross the first danger line of 1.5 degree global average rise by in the decade of 2030s, by around 2035-36. That means lot of the earth systems, and the earth systems are interconnected. Several of the earth systems are going to collapse beyond the decade of 2030s, which is not far. For young people, that will be their prime. Even we are a little older, we will be probably alive. So we are seeing the massive disasters like this US Western Coast massive fires, Australian massive fires, the disruption of the jet stream repeatedly, like Texas had the snowstorms and Europe had the massive flooding. These are all caused by the disruption of the jet stream. But in the decade of 2040s, these are going to be, some of these are going to be beyond control. By that time, even if we stop every emission, this will be not controllable, because the runaway climate change, which has the positive feedback mechanisms taking over, that risk is real now, and the scientists are really scared. If you talk to them outside the official meetings, they said either they are resigned or they are extremely alarmed. So this is the state of the world, that we are going into an irreversible change which will be for millennia, thousands of years. And if we cannot stop that in the next 20 years, particularly what we do in the next 10 years or 9 years, by 2030, 2032, nobody can actually pinpoint particular year, it's a range. So if we can't stop this trend, the future generations, we are committing to a very uninhabitable earth, which is a massive crime against humanity, massive crime against life. So that we are, all climate justice groups, movements, activists everywhere are fighting against whatever it takes, and people now, that's why people are now coming onto the streets, people are protesting, people are occupying mines, people are going and getting arrested, beaten, but still they are on the street. Because this is a battle for not only our generation, this is a battle for saving not only humanity, this is a battle for saving a normal life that we know as it is now.
Soumyada, can you tell us how alternatives will help in this battle of climate change?
See, if you have to tackle climate change, it's not enough to know the problem, the total magnitude of the problem and total amount of reduction and other actions that has to be taken. The actions has to be broken down into different countries and different areas and different activities that create the problem. So in that, supposing we talk about the food system, which contributes the cultivation, total agriculture, which is industrial chemical agriculture, which is contributing roughly 13 to 14% of global emission. So if we don't talk about transforming that system to a system of either any of the agroecological practices, I have no special knowledge or preference for either natural or organic or anything else, but an agroecological system which is both very low consumption, which is net carbon negative, which is known to be, as well as it's not destructive to biodiversity. Both are essential for farming. So without transforming that system, if we just talk about efficiency increase, it will not lead to a global change, it will be only a token thing. Similarly, one of the other major contributors is energy. The most significant, the largest segment comes from energy use and energy generation. So if you still keep thinking about we can have better coal plants or we can have solar plants in one place, mega scale, giga scale, and take that power 2000 kilometers, 3000 kilometers, like even now Europe is planning. They are planning mega and giga solar power plants in northern Africa, the desert areas, and undersea cables will take power to Europe. So these kind of solutions have inbuilt huge footprint, and it's not only carbon footprint, they have ecological footprints in terms of water, in terms of impact on biological diversity, other species. So you cannot really tackle this problem without breaking it down into solutions which have far more localized roots, but they are connected, and they are connected with a global vision. The solutions have to be at every stage, villages, towns, localities, but they have to be connected, because you cannot have one solution without its consequences, implications which have on other systems. So those kind of systems, similarly in transport, the today's focus mostly is on electric cars, but individual electric vehicles have a huge footprint of metals, plastics, glass, everything, plus the batteries. If we instead talked about electric public transportation, immediately two very large areas will be tackled. From transportation, because we know individual car transportation and public transportation, the per passenger kilometer footprint becomes around 1/8 to 1/10. That means you are reducing by roughly 80% to 85% or 90%, and you are not really requiring a billion cars or 2 billion cars. What is preventing from more than today's 1 billion cars? Tomorrow you will have electric vehicles. So what is preventing those who don't have cars to say, oh, now we can have an electric car? But that electric car will have 1 ton of steel, aluminium, plastics, glass, everything. So that much of additional mining. So we'll have to think of systems which not only look at immediate reduction in that localized reduction, but which have a systemic linkage. And these are all, basically the changes are global, but it has to be broken down into lots and lots of local solutions under local control. So, and today's technologies, which I want to just bring in, some of the technologies have some democratic character, inherently democratic character. Like you cannot build a nuclear power plant at a village level or a town level. You cannot build a coal power plant at the village where the coal deposit is available. But you can build a solar power plant for 5 households which is situated on top of a hill, or 10 houses which are situated somewhere by the river, and that will be sufficient for them. So this kind of solutions which are implemented at the local level, but with a full vision of the global connection and global systemic approach. So those are the solutions, and this will be helping tackling climate change, not only in terms of the physical climate, but also the connected crisis of species extinction. That's a very important area, because that has multiple roots, but climate is one driving factor.
Thanks, Amida. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.